Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. So today I'm going over a very important update made to the 2026 US Senate ratings. This is from the popular political website, the Center for Politics Sabato's Crystal Ball. They've been around for a very long time, I believe out of the state of Virginia. They've been predicting elections every midterm and every presidential cycle. And on June 11th, 2026, they made a very important update to the Senate map that I wanted to cover in today's video. They made three very important moves. They moved Dan Sullivan's Alaska Senate seat from lean Republican to toss-up. They moved North Carolina's open seat, which is currently held by Republican Tom Tillis, from toss-up to lean Democratic for Roy Cooper. And for John Husted, the Republican of Ohio, they moved it from lean Republican to toss-up. This is on top from June 2nd, where they moved Joni Ernst's Senate seat from likely Republican to lean Republican, and May 26th, where they moved Texas' Senate seat from likely Republican to lean Republican. So this is where things currently stand in their map. They currently have, with North Carolina now favored going blue, Republicans at 49, Democrats at 47, with 4 states as toss-up. That's the updated odds here. So we're going to update it on the map, but Montana as likely red. I do believe we have Nebraska, I think it was, likely red as well. Texas goes lean red, and then I believe, I want to say Iowa was lean red, lean Republican as well. The ratings may not be exact in case I'm misremembering here, but yeah, some of the states they have is safe, some of them have it likely, but that's okay for today's video. And then we have Alaska toss-up. Georgia would now be considered a lean Democratic state. North Carolina, a lean Democratic state. And I do believe they had New Hampshire as lean Democrat as well. Yes, they do. So we'll put New Hampshire as lean Democratic. So with that, the updated Sabato Crystal Ball rankings has Democrats of 47, Republicans of 49, with now 4 states viewed as toss-ups. Now, when you look at the ratings that they did on the map, in my own personal opinion, my own personal rankings, it's not really too shocking that Georgia, with Jon Ossoff being favored to win, does not shock me at all. He's led in the early polling thus far. He's been already getting pretty close to that 50% mark. He may not break it by a large amount, but he may be enough just to break it and stay under 5 points. So Ossoff being there makes a lot of sense. And I can even back this up with a new polling site I've been using called PollsMax. I've seen this going around online a lot. It's a very popular polling site here. In Georgia, we can look at Jon Ossoff versus Mike Collins, where the current polling data, Ossoff at 45.9, Collins at 41.8. Ossoff is leading by about 4.1%, and Ossoff has the lead in the jump on getting to that 50% number. In North Carolina, which they've now moved to lean Democrat, the polling's been a little bit more bullish. Roy Cooper's at 48.7%, Whatley's at 40.8%. A 7.8% lead would actually be a likely Democratic lead in the state of North Carolina. But I think they're predicting similar to my own rankings, which is North Carolina is a swing state, and Republicans usually perform very strongly in this swing state, usually winning it at the presidential and Senate level routinely, even if it's only by a point or two. So having Roy Cooper be lean Democratic, they're banking on the race on Election Day, narrowing up. I think a similar result and kind of a good comparison that I've been using for this race was the governor's race from, I believe it was 2020, where Roy Cooper ended up getting a 4.5% win over the Republican Dan Forest. Cooper ultimately got 51.5%, Forest got 47%, and a third-party candidate got about 1%. I think this has been the main comparison that makes a lot of sense for this race. You're in a more partisan environment in 2026 with a strong Democratic candidate, though it is a Senate race and arguably a weaker Republican candidate. So I think we're looking at something like that. But still, North Carolina now lean Democratic for the rankings here. But big rating shifts as well are Alaska and Ohio going to toss-up. Because if they were both in the Republican category still, that would have the Republicans at 51 and having the Senate majority. With Ohio and Alaska now moved into the toss-up category, it keeps the Senate map in play where the Democrats or Republicans could potentially win here. Now let's take a look. We'll look at Ohio first, right nearby. Ohio's a very tight race right now. John Husted currently leads over Sherrod Brown 48.9 to 46.1. This lead has been an interesting one. It was about 8.5% back in March of 2025. Looking around the end of June and beginning of July, it was around a 6.1% lead. Can look all the way up to January, it was about a 4.4% lead. Now it's about a 2.8% lead. So it's been spread out a lot throughout the last really year to even the last 8 months or so, but this race has narrowed up. It was 1.9% back in March. Now it's 2.8%. John Husted, I would still say, is a narrow favorite to win this race. Ohio is typically a state that votes pretty reliably Republican, like Alaska as well. But Sherrod Brown, being the former Democratic incumbent, already getting 46% of the vote, is essentially what he already got in the 2024 election as well. Brown got 46.47%, and based on the current polling data, he's already starting out at 46.1%. So this is a very close race that I think Husted is narrowly ahead in, but certainly Brown is capable of catching Husted and getting into the top two. Next, let's take a look at the state of Alaska, because Alaska is definitely a special case this time around, where Dan Sullivan, the Republican incumbent, against any other Democrat would probably win this race by roughly around that 8-point mark from back in September. But against Mary Peltola, this race has narrowed significantly. Peltola even currently leads right now by 0.4%. Now, Alaska's tricky because they do utilize ranked choice voting, and the way it typically works is if no candidate breaks 50%, then it'll go to ranked choice voting, where in Alaska, the top 4 candidates advance to the general election in their primary. And the way it's currently shaping up right now, it looks like it'll be Peltola and then 3 Republicans, including Dan Sullivan. So you would think, on paper, unless Peltola can break 50% or get very close to breaking 50% outright, that would give Dan Sullivan a strong chance at winning. So even though Peltola leads in the polls right now at 0.4%, if on election night Peltola is getting 46.5%, Dan Sullivan's getting 46.1%, it would probably be more likely than not that Dan Sullivan would win. Now, if Peltola is getting around 49 to 49.5% on election night and ranked choice voting is still needing, that really opens up the door for Peltola to potentially win this race, with the ranked choice voting assisting there from the down ballot candidates. So Alaska and Ohio being added to toss-up is very important because now it gives the Democrats 2 potential scenarios. These 2 alone won't help them flip the Senate, but it'll get them on the doorstep of potentially doing so. The state of Michigan being a battleground state, really no surprise here. It has been for a while on their rankings. Abdul El-Sayed and Mike Rogers is currently the most likely matchup based on the polling data, with Abdul El-Sayed leading in the Democratic primary. This race has narrowed up a lot as well. Rogers led Abdul El-Sayed by about 6 points back in August of 2025. In the beginning of March, he was up about 3.5% over El-Sayed. Now it's only a 0.7% lead, and Rogers at 43%, Abdul El-Sayed's at 42.3%. I've been saying this routinely for the last few months now, but Abdul El-Sayed probably gives the Republicans the best chance to win, and at the same time, it still may not be enough, because you're running in an election environment in 2026 that right now is not looking very strong for President Trump and the Republicans. In Michigan, a state Donald Trump carried in 2024, Mike Rogers was on that same ballot against Elisa Slotkin and lost by 0.3%, with Donald Trump at the top of the ticket, helping drive out turnout. In 2026, turnout will not be as high. Trump will not be there to try to drag Mike Rogers over the finish line, and I think it's going to be a little bit of an uphill battle for him, even against a Democrat like Abdul El-Sayed. So you have Alaska and Ohio, 2 Republican states that in this election are giving the Democrats real hope and optimism. You have the perennial battleground of Michigan that'll always be close, but I would argue the optics in the midterms favor the Democrats. And then you have the state of Maine, where Maine is a complete jump ball right now because it really depends on what Graham Plattner is ultimately going to do. Plattner took the lead over Susan Collins around the beginning to middle of March. He was leading over her by about 2.6%. In April, he was leading by about 4.5%. The race is narrowed back down to a 1.3% lead for Plattner over Collins. Though again, it's important to note, Maine utilizes ranked choice voting as well. Now, Maine, however, is more of the flip of the state of, say, Alaska, where Alaska in 2024 voted for Donald Trump by 13 points. Maine voted for Kamala Harris by 7 points. So in a 2026 election environment that's going to get more Democratic friendly, then you would argue that it would probably be more likely to give the Democrat the win. In 2020 even, Alaska voted for Trump by 10 points, Maine 9.1. So Maine was arguably more Republican than Alaska was Democratic in both 2020 and 2024. Though the strength of candidacy does play a role, and the partisanship of these Senate races does play a role as well. So Maine, Ohio, Michigan, and Alaska and toss-up on the Sabato map is very important for the Republicans and Democrats, because if the Republicans can hold on to Maine, that would get them to 50. That's the ballgame. Republicans with J.D. Vance hold the tiebreaker. So if they win one Senate seat of the remaining toss-ups based on the current map here, Republicans would technically hold the Senate. Now, if the Democrats can win Maine, can the Republicans hold Ohio? If they can do that, once again, Republicans hold the Senate. Democrats would need to win Maine, they would need to win Ohio, and they would have to win Michigan to get up to 50. But even then, Alaska, if it goes to the Republicans, it's a 50-50 Senate. J.D. Vance breaks all ties, and then the Republicans technically have the majority. On the Sabato crystal ball map, the Democrats would have to win all the states they're projected to win, and then run the toss-up table in Alaska, Ohio, Michigan, and Maine to win the Senate by one seat, 51 to 49. Is it possible? Yes, I would say it's possible. Is it likely? Debatable. I think Maine going Democratic is certainly possible. Michigan going Democratic is certainly possible. And then Ohio and Alaska can go Democratic. It's just you're banking on all four of them to go Democratic, especially out of the two states, Ohio and Alaska, that did vote for Donald Trump by over 10 points in 2024. I'm not ruling it out because Peltola and Sherrod Brown are very strong candidates, but right now John Husted is narrowly leading in the polls in Ohio. Peltola and Sullivan are in a very tight race in Alaska with a lot of undecided vote left. You could argue back and forth both ways on those two states. Democrats running the table getting all four is possible, but is it a likely scenario? You could really argue back and forth. But as for this video, Sabato Crystal Ball updates their rankings. It's hard not to see these ranking shifts. North Carolina becoming lean Democrat, Alaska and Ohio becoming toss-up. This is definitely good news for the Democrats and a reflection of a strong midterm environment in 2026 for the Democrats. The question will be, once everything is said and done, will it be enough in these four battleground states? Can the Democrats run the table and win all four, as they will need to take the Senate control away from the Republicans based on Sabato's current map? I hope you found this video interesting. If you did, I really appreciate if you would hit like and hit subscribe. That would do a big help to me and my channel. I post a new video every day at 3 p.m. and I really appreciate it if you could hit like and subscribe on this video. For now, that'll be it. Thank you so much for watching and hope to see you in a future video.